Neuronutrition, meaning brain nutrition, is all the rage these days. You've got basically podcasts, entire nutritional industries built around neuronutrition, yet most of it's pure garbage based on reductive science that hasn't been in fashion for hundreds of years, yet it's still proliferating today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the neuronutrition stuff that actually works, the stuff that works in clinic, at home, and the stuff you need to get your neuronutrition in check. Okay, today for neuronutrition, something very rare. We have to start with a disclaimer. We are not going to be talking about omega-3s, magnesium, broccoli sprouts, avocados, or some things along those lines. That's the nutritional stuff that everybody's talking about. What we're going to go through today is the actual stuff that the brain needs, the glucose, the oxygen, the activation, for you to have a healthy, happy brain, for you to have neuronutrition at a top level to be able to perform, to not be sick, to age well, to live well, all that sort of stuff. And really, we can kind of take examples, hundreds of examples from clinic, where people are very well-intentioned, showing up with bags of supplements on a weekly basis, and should I use this, should I use this, should I use this? And while that's all like the window dressing, it's like painting the window panes on your new house, yet there's no foundation being built yet. What we need to go through today are those fundamental aspects of how the brain works. How does the brain use energy? How does the brain use nutrition? And how you can use those things to build proper neuronutrition habits. The main reason that we're all screwing up, the majority of us, when it comes to neuronutrition, is that we're really looking at it from a through a reductive lens. So the analogy I sometimes will use in clinic is like if we looked at Ringo Starr and we said, wow, look how he strikes the foot pedal, or how hard can he hit the snare? That's actually going to give you no indication of the emergent property of what the Beatles would become. So you can look at all those individual little pieces and you can get very interesting little bits of data. Oh, from John. Oh, from Ringo. Oh, from Paul. But yet you're going to see that in a wide variety of other people in the population that are at a pretty high musical level. And yet when you put them together, that's the magic that happens. That's the brain. That's the energy consuming ability of the brain. That's the emergent property and the dynamics of how the brain works, and that's what we're actually going to be focusing on today. Drill number one, something we call half sleep, sleep quality, glimmy sleep. You can kind of come up with your own fun names for it, but it's basically about, and we'll set a target, let's call it 11 p.m. It's basically about the first half of the night, really prioritizing that from a sleep perspective. And the reason that we're doing that is for this relatively recently discovered immune system for the brain, basically called the glymphatic system. So, and this is wired into our DNA, this is wired into our biology, and we can argue about why and all these sorts of reasons. But in that first half of the night, call it from 11 till 2, 3 a.m., you have this priority where this, which is basically like a group of little janitors that kind of wake up when you're going to sleep. They get up and they clean the brain of all its residue. They clean the brain of all the damage that accumulates throughout the day. And what that does is it boosts efficiency. And as it boosts efficiency, it improves the nutritional demands on the brain. So then the brain itself gets more efficient, because what you got to think is, now we're going to go through some numbers. I'm not going to write all the zeros because I may mess that up. But there's 11 million bits for all us computer nerds out there. There's 11 million bits of information occurring consciously, subconsciously in the brain every second, yet we're conscious only of about 50 bits. So your brain is this amazing compressive organ, but it needs to be highly efficient to do so, and it requires a lot of energy to be able to do so. that first half sleep priority will really, really maximize that. And a couple take-home points for, okay, well, how do I do that? First, get off your damn phone, take a disconnection break. You got to be able to get off your phone half an hour, sometimes we'll say up to 2 hours before, so you're not bombarding yourselves with light. Dark should be obvious. Sometimes it is not. You need to be dark. For most people, sleep patterns will actually be better if they're relatively cool. So you may need to kind of like chill and get literally chill to be able to reduce that temperature down a little bit, to be able to optimize for that first half of sleep. Drill number 2. One of my favorites. Sometimes don't spell it right, so that would maybe be indicative of my neuronutritional abilities not being as optimal as they need to be right now. But is this right? Coach? Nose. And this is basically nose breathing. If you've seen any of our videos before, I'm always tape your mouth shut your mouth, keep your mouth closed, breathe through your nose, all that good stuff. It's back again. 5 min. When it's wake up, when it's bedtime, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. And it's really just about low and slow breathing. As low as you can go, meaning like, well, what is low breathing? Slow, kind of understand, okay, that's a slow breath. But I can take a slow breath, but have it still be a pretty strong breath. I need it to be a low and slow breath. I need it to be low. So it's got to be like you're barely pulling air in. Like I'm barely pulling air. I may just syncopally just fall to the ground. It's like low, so you're pulling in just a tiny bit of air, and it's a tiny bit of air out using the nose only. And it's like, well, what does that have to do with neuronutrition? This goes back to what we were saying a minute ago with the 11 million bits and the 50 bits and your amazing big brain being compressed down 11 million to 50. That takes a huge amount of energy. And again, when we're talking about energy coming from glucose, energy coming from oxygen, this is particularly when we're looking at the oxygen consumption of the neurons themselves. Because it's like, oh, I want to give it McDonald's, I want to give it fish oil, I want to give it this, I want to give it that, I want to give it all these things. At the brain level, the brain doesn't care. It needs oxygen, it needs glucose. And what this breathing will do, where you're low and slow for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening, it'll balance out your central nervous system in a way, specifically autonomic nervous system, something we speak about all the time, that normal flight or fight response. It makes it super efficient. The more efficient you are, the better you can be at this sort of compression, analysis, and efficiency that happens, that drives up brain energy, that drives up your nutritional capacity at the brain level to do all the things you need to do. So 5 minutes morning, 5 minutes evening. Let's go. Drill number 3. Again, one of my favorites. You're going to say, Dan, but I've seen this somewhere else. Coach, I've seen this somewhere else. Yeah, you have. And you will probably see it again, because it's about really looking at the fundamentals of how the brain uses energy. And this is our CPE, conversation pace exercise with a twist. Twist. And that twist is our breath hold. Probably saw that coming. But from a little bit of a different perspective. So we're saying about 4 days a week, 4 days. You've got 20 minutes. Yes, it can be more than 20 minutes. It can be 30 minutes. It can be 40 minutes. But again, you're kind of working within your aerobic sort of capacity. We're saying 20 minutes min. There needs to be a minimally viable level of activation happening here. And what you're going to do throughout a 20-minute session is you're thinking about every 5 min, there's a 20-second breath hold. And again, if you haven't seen some of the other stuff that we've done before, you're going out, conversation pace, okay, I could run like this all day, I could ride like this all day. Every 5 minutes, while you're still moving, you don't stop moving. You don't walk the dog, you don't let it pee, you still move, you're still going. 20 minutes, conversation pace, you just go. As you're moving, as you're exercising, you hold your breath for about 20 seconds. And it seems like, it's easy. Once you start doing it, you'll see that it's actually not as easy as it seems. And the phenomenal thing about this is something that we've seen when you put people in brain scanners. This is something when you're just measuring things like CO2 levels, when they're being very active. You can see some of this stuff when you're measuring things like blood lactate, is that when you hold your breath, what happens? CO2, carbon dioxide, doesn't go out. I'm holding my breath, breathing in oxygen and breathing out CO2. That CO2 stays. The CO2 is a dilator. So it forces the vessels to open. So the vessels open, so you get super sensitive to carbon dioxide. Why is that great? Why is that great, you say? Because then all of a sudden you have all this oxygen coming up and down, and I'm running and I'm moving and I'm doing all these things. So when we're talking about activation of networks in the brain, it's not just motor areas, it's visual areas, it's hearing areas, it's balance areas, it's thinking areas. You have all this blood flow, you have all this oxygen coming up. And oxygen is literally what the brain needs from a nutritional perspective. Oxygen, glucose also being carried via these vessels here. And as those begin to open, then these little guys, the neuron, that's an ugly little neuron, but it's a neuron. These little neurons can actually grab the oxygen. So there's something called, I'm going crazy now, oxygen extraction fraction. So the more efficient you can get these neurons at grabbing oxygen, pulling them in, because they need that to be able to perform that greedy level of work that they're doing all the time, the more efficient you become, the more nutritionally efficient your brain becomes. And that you can get from this simple little breath hold exercise every few minutes. If you then work into it, yeah, you can do it a little bit more frequently. I don't want you to be like every minute trying to do breath holds. So we call it 5 minutes, 20 seconds or so, 4 days a week, breath hold while you're doing CPE. Okay, so to summarize the 3 drills, first one, half sleep. You're in bed by 11 p.m. You're really prioritizing that first half of the night, getting those janitors, that lymphatic system to kick into gear. Number 2, this is when we're doing our 5 minutes low and slow breathing in the morning, 5 minutes of low and slow breathing in the evening, regulating your nervous system, boosting its neuronutrition efficiency. Number 3, this is the breath hold CPE. This says you're doing it with a little bit of a twist. Every 5 minutes, you're out there 4 days a week, 20 minutes minimum. Every 5 minutes, you're holding your breath 20 seconds while you're still working, opening up those vessels, making you super sensitive to carbon dioxide. Yes, that's a good thing. And again, optimizing that neuronutrition. Okay, so I know we're coming at this from a little bit of a different angle today. We weren't talking about the omega-3s, we weren't talking about fish oils, we weren't talking about nootropics or some of the other things. But hopefully this resonates a bit. This is something that we see in clinic all the time. This is something that becomes really important from the fundamental aspects of how the brain uses energy to perform its tasks. And that's really what neuronutrition is all about. So please send us a comment below, let us know what you're thinking, and stay tuned for more videos.